Three questions came in, the same question. I want to ask you a question that's been bothering me and my friends for a very long time. Hopefully you'll have an answer from a Jewish perspective. We call Hitler evil. And the reason we call Hitler evil is because he killed so many millions of innocent people. And yet we had Amalek, and we are told that we should kill out all of the Amalekites. The same is true with the 7 nations, based on our belief. So we also justify genocide. We have our agenda. We have our belief. Hitler did genocide, but the Torah also says you should kill out all the children of Amalek. He had a vision for the world, and Jews had their vision for the world. Why do we call him evil? Of course, I know he was wrong for obvious reasons, but why are we judging him as a brutal person when our religion also calls for the genocide of Amalek? Okay. How do we do this? How do we do this in a brief way? This is a very, very good question. This is a good question. It's an important question. Let me just make a few qualifications, and that is, as the Rambam puts it very clearly, with all of the 7 nations in Eretz Yisrael, the fact is that the Gemara Yerushalmi says it, and the Rambam quotes it, Yehoshua sent each of them a letter. And the letter was, he gave them 3 options. One option was to leave. Another option was to make peace, and they would pay taxes and have to live according to the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach under Jewish rule. And the third option was to fight. So there was no mitzvah, the Rambam says, no mitzvah to go in and kill every Canaanite and his wife and his child. There was a letter that Yehoshua sent to every single nation. In fact, the Girgashi left. So they always had a chance to leave or to remain and observe the morality of the Sheva Mitzvah B'nai, and a Jew was not allowed to touch them. Or there was the ability of the third choice, which was war. This is the view of the Rambam, who was considered the greatest halachic authority in Jewish history. The Rambam says this clearly, and it's based on a Gemara in Yerushalmi. That's number one. Even when they went to war against the Knainim, you know what the halacha was? They weren't allowed to surround the city from four sides. You know why? Because then the enemy becomes desperate, and he has no choice but to fight back. They had to leave one side open so that the enemy could run away at any point. Imagine fighting a war this way. This is how the Jews had to fight the war. This is what the Chazal tell us. They surrounded it from 3 sides. One had to remain open. Even Amalek, the Rambam says, the first choice had to be to allow them to make peace with the Jewish people and to live according to the moral standards of civilization, which is the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, no murder, and the other Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, no stealing, no murder, respect for God, respect for animals, respect for marriages, and have a judiciary system. The Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Even Amalek, this is what he says. Amalek, he says, you had to first offer a peaceful agreement in which they would let go of the sword and let go of their ambition to kill every single Jew. Okay, that's next step. Now I'm going to go to the next step. When you ask about Torah killing Amalek, if they didn't agree to this and you killed Amalek and the children, you have to see it in the context of all of Judaism. When you read through the Torah, who invented the idea of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha? Love another person like you love yourself. This is from Judaism, Parshas Kedoshim. Who invented the idea, ki b'tzelem Elokim asa es ha'adam? Every human being was created in the image of God. Shoifech dam ha'adam b'dam yishafech. When you pour the blood of a person, there's a death penalty because you murdered the image of God. Not a Jew, even a non-Jew. This is Parshas Bereshis and Parshas Noach. That every single human being was carved out in the image of God, and therefore every human being, man and woman, Jew and non-Jew, child and adult, has infinite dignity. Ki b'tzelem Elokim asa es ha'adam. This is Judaism. This is what Judaism gave the world. Who invented the idea that there's something called right and wrong? There's something called morality. There's something called a moral conscience. This is Judaism. The Mishnah says in Sanhedrin that Judaism taught the world Adam was created as one person. Why? So that no human being should ever turn to another human being and say, I am superior to you. My race is superior to you. My tribe, my religion, my faith, my background, and therefore I could kill you, which is the basis of Nazi racism. Why? Because we all came from the same person. If we all come from the same person, how could you be superior? It's like brothers and sisters. We share the same genes. We share the same chromosomes. We come from Adam and Chava. That's why Hashem created one person from which everybody comes. These are the gifts of Judaism to the world. So when you look at Judaism, you have to understand, study Nazi textbooks and see what they felt about people who are retarded, people who are black, people who are crippled, people who are disabled, people, of course, who are Jewish. look at their culture, look at the literature they produced about people who did not embody the great Aryan race. The whole culture, the civilization was based on the ideals that are the opposite, the antithesis of Judaism, the ambition to create a world of bloodshed, violence, barbarity, brutality. Hitler once said that we hate the Jews because they circumcised the world. They circumcised the world physically through a bris, and they circumcised the world psychologically by giving us a conscience. For him, a conscience was a curse. He once said we have to get rid of the Jews and their life-denying 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are life-denying because the law of the jungle, the survival of the fittest. If you're stronger than me, you kill me. The lioness fights with the antelope and the antelope loses. That's the law of nature. And he said, this is how life is supposed to be. If you're weak, which means if I could kill you, that's the right to kill you. Look at the jungle. That's how it works. The baby elephant doesn't say, but I'm so cute. Why are you killing me? Because you're a baby. That's why I kill you. Because you're retarded. Because you're crippled. This is the greatest antithesis to Judaism. So I want you to look at Judaism in its full context. See all the psukim, see all the halachas. And then look at the Amalek story. Don't just pluck out one mitzvah from all the mitzvahs of the Torah and compare that to Nazism. Study Nazism. I don't know if you want to study it, but you could read Mein Kampf. I don't think you should, but it's available. Unfortunately, it's quite available. And you'll understand the whole backbone of what Nazi culture was, what Hitler represented versus lahavdil, what Moshe Rabbeinu represented, what the Jewish sages represented, what the morality of Judaism represents. Rachmanim, Baishanim, Goim lechasadim. The Gemara says in Maseches Sotah Daf Yudalid that the whole Torah, Tchilasa Gemilas Chasadim, V'Soifa Gemilas Chasadim. The Torah begins with kindness and it ends with kindness. It's the beginning of Judaism and the end of Judaism. The Gemara says in Shabbos Lamed Aleph that Hillel told a convert, a non-Jew, he said, teach me the whole Torah on one leg. Meaning 10 seconds, and he says the whole Torah is what you dislike to be done to you, don't do to anybody else. Ve'idach pirushu, everything else is a commentary. Now go study the commentary. The whole Torah is a commentary on treating another person like you treat yourself. It's important to understand context. Now, finally, you'll ask the question, okay, but how can you kill every child of Amalek? And the answer to that is, I guess, it makes us uncomfortable. And you know why? I want to tell you something. You know why it makes you uncomfortable? Because you grew up with Jewish values. That's why it makes you uncomfortable. Because for thousands of years, we have been preaching about the dignity of life. And that's why it makes so many Jews uncomfortable when we read about Amalek. There's certain cultures, when you tell them that every Israeli has to be killed, they're perfectly fine. Every Jew has to be killed, they're perfectly fine. They have no problem. Jews, when you tell them Amalek has to be killed, we all don't feel good about it. You know why we don't feel good about it? That's the greatest testimony to Judaism. Because for thousands of years, we have been indoctrinated in the deepest way that life is the most sacred thing in the world. It shows you the Jewish attitude. Okay, now after everything's said and done, Rabbi YY, Tachlis, what's the idea? So I'll just say this very, very brief. It's going to take me, I think, 30 seconds. And that is as follows. When you think about it, let's understand. If I knew for sure that the baby in the crib is going to grow up to be Joseph Mengele or Joseph Goebbels or Himmler or Adolf Eichmann or Alfred Rosenberg or Goring or Rudolf Hess or Adolf Hitler, and I can kill the child, or I could not kill the child, what do you think is the right thing to do? Now, nobody knows that this baby is going to grow up to be Eichmann, but let's say you do. Think about it. What would be the answer? Now, even in this case, the Rambam says that if Amalek is ready to change his colors, you're not allowed to kill anybody of Amalek. And the Gemara says, "Mibnei banav shel Haman lamdu Torah b'Bnei Brak." The grandchildren of Haman came and learned Torah in Bnei Brak, and Haman came from Amalek, because we trust that then this baby will be educated as a mensch. But what God is saying is that there's a certain situation where I'm telling you that each one of these children is going to murder and going to want to murder every single Jew alive. And that's why it's a moral mitzvah. That's, I think, a brief presentation that at least gives some perspective to this situation. If anybody